Cheers. Hey friends, what's up? I am Chris. This is my good friend Kevin. You all probably know him, but if not, if you're some future generation, this is the most musical person I know by a long shot.
Sorry,
so,
Jack.
Yeah, fuck you, Jack. So we're here in Kevin's studio, and I'm wearing my Rockstar pleather pants because you have to rock out in all black, and we're gonna play some fucking drums. So, yeah, that's what's happening. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
All right.
So let's talk about drums. So I thought we'd start with explaining the drum kit, what everything is, what it does,
Okay.
how it works, and then talk about what to use to give yourself like a basic like drum beat.
Okay. Here's what I know about the drums.
Yeah.
Ringo Starr.
Yeah. Great.
That's
drum.
it. That's about it.
Great drummer. Highly underrated.
That's all I can say
Yeah.
about the entire realm of drums.
Ringo credits himself with being the inventor of the drum stool that has a back on it, like a chair.
Oh, really?
Because John and Paul would be arguing so much, he would just like lean back and just like wait for them to finish. And so that's like a story of his that he came up with the idea for that so he could just do that and hang out in the studio.
How come you don't have a drum seat with a chair?
Because it's usually me and the only arguing is like internal.
Okay, so it's all happening upstairs?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. So what, let me switch, I'm going to do a chop down camera.
Sure.
While you're talking about what we're even looking at here.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with the snare drum because that's the one right in front of me that has two primary functions.
Oh god, sorry. This is production value. The production value every week, people, is getting something. Okay, so we've got in our little picture-in-picture window that's floating all over the place because the connection is terrible. So that is, we're looking down, can you, yeah, okay, we can see Kevin's hands.
Yep, so this is the snare drum.
Okay, snare drum.
It is called the snare drum because on the bottom of it, there are a bunch of snares. And these snares are what give it that like rat sound, right?
Yeah.
So they go across the bottom head of the drum and gives it that kind of like snappy sound.
Why the bottom and not the top?
Great question. The reason is probably because you'd be striking the top and that would be in the way.
Okay.
Probably.
So you want to have
I don't actually know.
You want to have a nice striking surface.
You do. You want a nice open striking surface.
Ideally covered with some kind of painter's tape.
Yeah, and we'll get into why I did that. And, it does every time I look at it. I just think it looks like a butthole, but that's okay. So the snare drum has two primary functions. One is with the snares up and touching the bottom of the head, so it gives it the snare sound. The other is you can flip with this switch on the side, just flip the snare off. Now the snare is no longer engaged with the bottom head, and it just acts like any other drum does. So I don't know.
It's a very different sound.
Yep, and so that's tuned up pretty high too. So it's like, I don't know if it'll become that clear on the stream right now.
We have no idea.
So again with the snare, so here's with the snare on. You can hear that kind of almost like a machine gun, right? Like a gunshot.
Yeah.
Versus right. So that's no snare versus snare. So that's your snare drum. In most of your beats that you'll play, your snare drum is going to be on your 2 and 4. So if you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I'm right-handed, so I lead with my right hand. I end up playing my snare with my left hand. So my left hand goes on the 2 and the 4.
Is that just because it's kind of easy? It's more like that gives your right hand. Your right hand's gonna be moving around.
Yeah. So the style of play is called crossover, which is the most traditional.
Okay.
I used to play in New York. My friend Mark played open hand, and he was right-handed, but he led with his left hand and would play like this, which was interesting when he got to his cymbal because he'd have to switch. And so it was this like weird thing that like he couldn't play this way. It was just like too awkward for him.
Right.
But he could play this way and then he could play this way. So he had a bit of like an ambidextrous.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So he's a really interesting.
So when you play the snare, your snare hand doesn't really move.
Correct.
And
I'll use that to like get to a tom, to get to this tom, but it depends on like the kind of fill that I'm doing and like what needs to happen on what beat, right?
Okay.
Like where things are happening. But for most points, when we're just talking about just a straight 4/4 straight ahead beat, the snare is going to be mostly on the 2 and the 4, and it's just going to be that hand hitting that.
So let me pause you a second because
Yeah.
you're reminding me that I forgot to ask you about like why are we doing drums with you? Like what? Tell me about like what you're like why did we choose this? I'll tell you the reason.
That's
a
great question. I would love you to answer that question.
Okay.
Why are we here, Chris?
Why are we here? I think that, well, the only drums I've ever tried would probably I don't think this counts is on like that Rock Band.
That's a great place to start.
I mean, like I think it has some of the mechanic. Like you have to get like, but I didn't even play very much of that.
So that experience is more experience than I had before I ever sat down behind a real drum kit.
Really? Okay.
I used to set up pillows. I had a chair and I would put the chair in front of my bed. I had a twin bed, and I would sit on the chair and I would set up different pillows in what I thought to be an arrangement of a drum set. And my mom always had these like margarine containers, and she was always crafting, so there was always like beads for like necklaces or bracelets or whatever. And so I would take a bunch of beads and put them in a margarine container, and I would put like a face cloth or like a hand towel over it.
That's actually
and I would use that as the hi-hat because like the rattling sound had kind of a sharpie thing, and I would put it on top of like a book or whatever, right? So the book would be there, and then there'd be like the pillow here. And I just had a pair of drumsticks because I played the snare drum in the school band. And playing the snare drum in the school band in like 3rd grade was just going rat, tat, rat, tat, tat, right? And that's all I could do.
Yeah.
And like someone else played like the big bass drum. Like it wasn't even like a drum set. It was like one person played the snare, one person had mallets and played the bass drum, and then one person literally just played the cymbal.
Oh.
And it was like
they didn't get to do one of these.
No,
as kids?
none of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just like a cymbal on a stand, you know.
Right.
Like, and so I like was obsessed with the drums, and I even think when I was a baby, I was always like banging around like pots and pans and stuff like that, right? I think I always just like liked making noise, which should be no surprise to anyone who knows who's an adult. I like to make noise, right? And so I learned to play by setting up pillows, and just playing along to like Nirvana.
Okay.
When I was like 13.
All right.
And so you saying the rock band drum set, like that's more of a real drum set than like what I like self-taught.
Okay.
So
all right. I mean, I guess, but you're also like following weird lines coming down the screen at you. So I don't know how much that's like.
Yeah.
I don't think Ringo's out there like watching lines come, but maybe if you took
maybe that's how he like visualizes in his mind. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So like, I mean, but you've played a number of instruments, and like I thought of you like when I first met you were playing guitar in a band.
Yep.
And then shortly later, like just a few months later, you were playing drums in a band, and that like blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, like you can switch, you can switch instruments.
Yeah.
And I guess I should have known that. I was old enough. Dave Grohl famously was Nirvana's drummer, and then
so what's funny about that
Foo Fighters.
is like Nirvana was my favorite band, and like he was my idol when I was a teenager, right? Like Kurt should have been, but like I was like obsessed with the drummer in Nirvana.
Yeah.
And then when he came out with that Foo Fighters first album with the gun, I bought the cassette. It was like $8 or something, and I like bought the cassette, put the cassette in the tape deck in this car that I had, and I just like listened to that, and I was like, the drummer wrote these songs.
Yeah.
And not only that, he played every instrument. Like that blew my mind. I was like, how was he able to play all the instruments? Like I don't understand how did you just like play the drums first and like imagine the guitar and then go back and play the guitar? Or like I didn't know about like they use like a click track or a metronome so that like you can play a guitar and like a reference, and like you can play the drums and you can go back and like redo things, right? Like this one guy I used to play with would record the drums like kind of basic, along with the rest of us playing our guitar parts, and then he would go back and re-record his drums after. And that was just like a weird thing where like he didn't want to do a real take as like a live thing. He always wanted to just spend time, and so that was the method he came up with for doing it, which is very different than any method I ever came up with for it. But that's kind of the thing with like, as you learn how to do these things, you teach yourself these things, like you come up with like these weird methods. Anyway, so I was blown away by Dave Grohl, and I only really recently heard him talking in an interview recently on like an Instagram reel or something, where he said that he learned to play the drums by setting up pillows on his bed. And I was like,
no
wow,
way.
that's crazy.
No way.
So like this guy that I like was like my idol, and like was the reason like I wanted to play a bunch of different instruments and like wanted to write songs and like play all the instruments and like just like make my own little recordings or whatever, and was like the inspiration for me playing drums. Learned to do it the exact same way I did it, and like there's just like this parallel of this guy that like I've just been inspired by my whole life that literally did the same thing that I did, and I just like never knew, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, quick aside on that, but I
No,
think
that's
like
awesome,
a
man.
funny
Thank
little
you.
thing.
Yeah, so like I guess the reason why I selected drums of all the things I know you play is like I've tried guitar. I'm terrible at it, but I've at least tried that. So for this to be total novice, I think I have to at some point.
Yeah, we should have done the piano. I think that's.
I've pressed keys on a piano.
I'm not
before.
playing the piano for the internet. That's,
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable enough at my level of skill. When you guys are over, I'll play silly songs about my dog, but yeah, not for the internet.
Okay. Yeah. So all right. Well, thank you for doing this then. Like, I really.
No, thanks for asking.
I don't think I've ever. I mean, I think I was in a. What are those big like music superstores where they have all the different instruments? I've definitely been in one of those, sat down at a drum kit and like pretended, but that's pretty much the extent. That and a rock band. So.
Yeah. Well, you're already at an advantage with a rock band drum set.
Yeah.
So
I should have set up pillows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pillows. They're great for more than just sleeping. So okay, so this is
you were
snare
teaching
drum.
us about the snare.
Yep. So snare drum. So it has the switch where you can turn the snare on and off. It also has a little.
Do you use the switch like mid-song? Like if you were performing.
You could. Like there's a certain style of song where like the drummer will be like doing some kind of like, and they'll want it to not be a snare drum. They'll just want it to be like the highest tom that they have. And if they don't have a tom, they just get utilitarian and switch the snare on or off.
Okay.
Depending on what they're doing. Right, and so that can be like there's like a lot of like Latin groove things where typically it would be like an auxiliary percussionist playing like hand drums or like just like some kind of other percussion along with the drummer. If the drummer doesn't have that or the band doesn't have that, the drummer will kind of fake it with turning the snare off or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of uses for turning the snare off.
Sweet.
But yeah, mostly it's to be like a really like high pitched tom, which a tom is this drum. So the next drum in our order here, this is what you call a 4-piece kit because it is 4 drums. It's the snare, the rack tom, the floor tom, and the kick drum. So I'm gonna go in that order.
Rack tom, floor tom.
Yep.
Kick drum. Okay.
The reason it's called the rack tom is because it's rack mounted.
Racked up.
Right. A lot of times you can have your rack tom not on an arm connected to the kick drum. My other drum set in my studio, it sits on a snare stand, so it's like two snare stands, one for the snare drum, one for the tom, right? But it's commonly referred to a rack tom. So the rack tom is just a lower pitch than the snare drum, and it's a deeper drum. So when you hit it, again, if I turn the snare off, here's what the snare sounds like. Here's what the tom sounds like. Right? So you've got 2 different tones or 2 different pitches happening. Right?
Yeah, much deeper.
Yep, and then same thing with the floor tom. It's just a bigger drum. It's got a larger size head. It's deeper and it's right. Yeah. Now with all of these drums, they all have lugs on them, and you can tune them. So as you change the tightness of the lug, the pitch changes and it goes higher. So the tighter it is, I don't know if it's coming through or not.
I heard it a little bit there.
Yeah,
like,
so
but I'm not. Yeah.
Right? But if I make these looser, it releases the tension, which leads to lower pitch because the head is not being stretched so tightly.
Yeah. Which I can imagine, like you were talking about playing instruments in the kitchen, right? Or like making your own. I'm imagining like if you stretch something tight and then tap on it, like it has a very different sound.
Totally, like think about like an elastic, right?
Yeah,
you ever like stretch an elastic and then pluck it?
Exactly.
And then like you like make it looser or tighter, and the pitch changes, right?
Yeah.
Same thing like with a guitar string. When you tune a guitar string down, you're relieving tension, and so the less tension, the lower the note sound. Like anything, you get to a certain point where it's just inaudible.
Yeah.
Like it's just too loose where it's just a thud.
Like a fart.
Yeah, it's just like a
fart drums.
Yeah, like you might as well just like tap a pillow because like pillows don't have pitch, right? I mean, like they can if you hit them hard enough, I guess, but you know, anything can have pitch if you hit it hard enough. So these drums, the different sizes will dictate what their ideal tuning is going to be, but you can take, and there's like different size like floor toms, right? Like this is a 14-inch floor tom. Usually I'll play with a 16 or an 18-inch, and so the 18-inch or the 16-inch floor tom is going to be wider. It's going to give me an opportunity to have a deeper sound because it's a bigger drum. So the bigger the sound, or the bigger the drum, the deeper the sound you can get, the lower the pitch you can get on it. But with this, I can tune it down to sound more like a 16-inch or an 18-inch, just based on getting the lugs loose enough so that it's a lower.
Be like taking a guitar string and dropping it.
Exactly.
Drop D or
exactly.
Something like
Same basic principle, right?
Okay.
So this is the floor tom. So the reason it's called the floor tom is because it's a tom drum, and it stands on the floor. It's a you know.
Checks out.
It must have been invented in Bodkin because Bodkin are a very literal people, and the floor tom is called such for the reason. The last drum, I call it the kick drum. A lot of people call it the kick drum. A lot of people call it the bass drum.
Bass kick drum.
Yeah. So I call it the kick drum just because that's what I've colloquially referred to it as for decades. But the reason it's called the kick drum is because you have your pedal that your foot. You can either use your ankle to like make your foot go like this, or if you're like me, you like kind of lift by your knee.
I'm gonna do this. We're gonna close up here.
Yeah. And so
because this is an angle I couldn't quite get very well with our setup.
Yep. So you've got a pedal, and that pedal has a mallet. So much like when I was talking about the school band, when we would hit the bass drum with the mallet, or like in a marching band, you see the guy hitting with the mallet. Same principle here. It's just you're using your foot to do so, right? And so your foot hits. Presses down, makes the pedal, the chain move so that the mallet strikes the head of the kick drum.
All right.
And so it's called that because people are basically kicking it. Is the nomenclature.
Yeah, that checks out.
And same thing with the kick drum. It's a bigger drum. It's deeper. You can tune it up or tune it down. Some drummers famously will tune the snare drum down and the kick drum up to like get different qualities out of it, and some drummers will tune the snare drum super high up, so it's very pitchy, and the kick drum really down low, so it's like really like thuddy and punchy.
Okay.
I'm more of a tune the snare drum down and tune the kick drum up. Just when I record, it comes through a little bit better. So that's just my personal preference.
All right.
On it. So those are the four drums. So that's the 4-piece drums: the drum kit, the snare, the rack tom, the floor tom, and the kick drum. We also have 2 cymbals.
Okay.
This first cymbal is called the hi-hat. It is a set of hats, and it goes up high, so it's called the hi-hat. And this one is called the ride cymbal because you will ride your beat on it. It can also be referred to as a crash ride if you crash. So when you hear that crashing sound, it's a crash cymbal. A lot of times on your 4-piece drum set, you'll have a ride cymbal here and a crash cymbal here, or 2 crashes and a ride. Or if you're an emo band, everything's a ride cymbal that you're crashing all the time.
Because you're sad.
I have those as well.
Yeah.
And every ride is a crash. So you use these cymbals to keep time and to do your leading when you're playing your beat. So for example, we talked about the snare being on the 2 and the 4. The kick goes on the 1 and the 3.
Okay.
The hi-hat goes on all 4. Okay. In a basic thing, right? So we're gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, kick, snare, kick, snare. I guess not really snare, just off, but right. So that's your basic 4/4 beat. At that tempo, we can take that 4/4 beat and slow down the tempo, so that instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1, 2, 3, right? That's still a 4/4.
It's still 4/4.
Yep.
It's
just at a different tempo.
The BPMs are down.
Exactly. So now you can take that basic 4/4, and since you're playing a slower tempo, there's all that space open up. Instead of playing 4s, you can play 8s.
Okay.
So you count 8. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or we still got? Oh, we're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it'd be like. instead of it being 1, 2, 4, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So technically that time signature is like 8, and that's what is considered like a halftime. On it, 4/4 is usually just like the 1, 2, 3, and 4, right?
Okay.
But that's how you can take your basic 4, stretch it out, slow it down, and if we were like really the difference between like a really slow 4/4 and an actual true like halftime where you count in 8, right? Anyway, so that's kind of like what you could do with the tempo and all that stuff. But basic 4/4 again is just 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So see, even like it's not, I guess, to count 8. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? But really, you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, and like it's like a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So that's the basics. So for a 4/4, you're always gonna, again, all 4 beats on the hi-hat, 1 and 3 on the kick, 2 and 4 on the snare. That will get you 95% of pop music is just a 4/4 beat like that. Where disco comes in is they started putting an accent. They started kind of fucking around with the 4 count, and they would put an accent in between. So instead of it being 1, hang on, 3, 4, right? It'd be like 1, 2, 3, right? So you're basically offsetting. So you're not hitting the first. It's basically you're hitting like every and.
Can you do that slower?
Yep. So it'd be like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Right.
You're
Instead of
skipping.
Yep. So instead of going 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 and 3 and 4, it's and, right?
That's wild.
Yeah, and so a lot of times.
That immediately sounded like disco.
Yep, and that's your disco beat, right? But what's funny about that is like a lot of early disco, they're not doing the accent thing. They're actually playing like a 1 and 2 and thing. But the way that the drums are recorded, you hear the and more clearly because it's not happening at the same time that the kick is happening at the same time that the snare is happening. And at some point, it just changed because a lot of that disco stuff like was like early disco was like sampled from like other grooves or whatever, and they would like do something different with it, like make a loop of it in the studio or whatever. And at some point when it became like a live band thing, like they were like, oh, it's cool, like we're gonna like lean into that and like really accent that thing. And so one way to do that is to change the like velocity of your strokes. So like instead of it being like 1, 2, like you'd be like, right? And so like you're hitting whichever beat you want to have come through more with like harder stroke essentially. Okay. And some people will do that, and that's how some drummers do this like very like, you know, feel thing or whatever. But a lot of times like in just like when like someone's like play a disco beat, they're just gonna do the and part like right. Anyway, so that's how you kind of still have a 4/4, but it's like you can kind of change it up or whatever, right?
That's
so,
right. But
when we talk about like Beatles 4/4 or like rock and roll 4/4 or like pop 4/4, it's really just that. So that's the mechanics of it. Do you want to try starting with? Oh, and the thing about the hi-hat too is it also has a pedal, and the pedal will make the cymbals.
Okay.
Right. So like in like a rock song, it'd be like, you know, closed hi-hat for the verse, so the singer can talk about how tortured he is, right? And then when you get to the chorus, it's all
opens it up a lot.
Or you can ride the ride cymbal, you can wash the ride cymbal by using like a crash. Right, so that's a different mechanic of the hi-hat. So the first thing you'd want to try is sitting behind the drum set, kind of getting your feet aligned where they're supposed to be on both the pedals.
Okay.
And then we can probably start with just like stiff grip.
Okay.
On that, I hold my drumsticks like a caveman. There's an actual like real technique to doing it, and I don't do it. So I'm going to teach you the incorrect way.
All right.
But I'm going to have you sit behind the drum set. I'm going to grab these dowels and use those as my prop to coach you through it.
Awesome. All right.
Oh, and I'll also take my beer.
Fine.
Please and thank you. Do you want yours?
No,
Okay.
I've
It's already in you.
it's already in
Yeah.
me. It's already in me. Okay. All right, so I'm sitting.
All right, so the first thing you want to do is just get your feet positioned. So, yep, foot on the kick drum, foot on the hi-hats. Okay, make those hi-hats nice and tight. There you go. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to just try counting
Well,
oh yeah. So you
talking about this.
yeah, so you can hold them really loose like this. I tend to just like hold them with these three, and then like my pinky kind of rests. But a lot of time as I'm playing, my pinky will add to the grip, and then that gives me a blister here because the stick is like vibrating. But that's fine. For the purposes of what we're doing, I think you just hold it in a way that makes sense, but not like like a handlebar. You want to kind of hold it more like a
Loosey.
yeah, like a utensil.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing we want to try doing is keep that hi-hat nice and tight with your foot, and with you're right-handed.
Yeah.
Okay, so with your dominant hand, you want to just try counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and keeping it on time. Because the hardest part is keeping a consistent time. Because it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, like, and that's just natural at the beginning. So don't worry about that. But try to think about like, how do I keep this? And like, if in your head it helps to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and not hit the ends and just hit the 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Like that can give you the mental like, it's like I've got like a less room for it to get off tempo, because in my head I'm like keeping this like very consistent thing happening, right?
Okay.
So let's try it. So on 4,
Okay.
we're gonna try counting 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4. That's great. Yep, you got it.
Okay.
All right. So now what you should try doing. Let's actually, we'll slow, now that we're going to incorporate, we're going to slow down. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going to go, just don't even worry about the kick yet. Just count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put the snare on the 2 and 4.
Oh yeah.
Yep, so ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. You got it. 1, 2, 3. Keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
Sorry, I'm losing. What I'm doing is I'm losing.
The
when I
coordination
focus,
will change.
when I focus to hit the 2, I forget to hit the.
Okay, so let's try it this way instead. Instead of a really slow 4, let's do the same tempo, but we'll do 8.
Okay.
All right. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the right way to count that is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. So since we're kind of doing like more of like a halftime, we're gonna put the snare on 3. There you go. 1, 2.
I started just hitting the air. I missed the symbol.
Yeah. This might try changing the angle of your elbow. Bring your elbow up and try the end of the stick where this the tip. Try making it so the tip hits the top of the cymbal.
Okay.
And instead of like and like try to get it like more of like a straight angle where it's like, and that might help create a little bit of room for it. I don't think you'd ever actually play the drums this way, but it might help as you're trying to like understand the mechanics and like get the separation of what your hands are doing. That's great. So now let's take it up into more complexity. Let's forget about the snare drum right now.
Okay.
And let's try the same 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then just put your foot, your kick, on 1.
Okay.
So we're gonna count it off on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. Yeah, I know. That's when it gets really fucking crazy, right?
Yeah. It's a lot to coordinate.
Yeah.
This is a real pat your head, rub your tummy.
Yeah.
Type of.
So let's do this. Let's do let's do. There's this band called Suicide, and a lot of their drum beats were no snares. It would just be like kick. So you can do like a 4 on the floor with a kick, right? So let's use our hand to count the hi hat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then just go 1, 2, 3.
That's on 8s, right? That's doing. That was hitting all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to be kick. So you basically want to be. Yep. Kick. 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Yeah, start with your hand. It's always gonna be easier to start with your hand.
All right. Yeah, that's it's the brain is not wired up yet for
Yeah.
this.
So
This is new muscle. We're creating new neural pathways or something.
So this is the way that you can keep a song going,
Mhm.
keep a rhythm happening, keep like the beat going, and not need to worry about all of my limbs.
Yeah.
It's just one hand and one foot.
Mm.
And that 4 on the floor thing is like a good trick when you're like, if you drop a stick or something, you can just be like crash cymbal and I meant to do that. I'm gonna pick up another stick, and that was a breakdown, and now we're back in our beat, right? But it's a good way to like incorporate the kick without needing to worry about the snare so much,
Okay.
and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I also feel a little bit like I'm beating like a war drum or something.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so what you want to do is make sure that the kick is just going on the 1 and the 3.
Right.
So try that. So try counting.
Second, I missed the 3. Okay.
Yeah.
The 1.
I know it's a lot to think about when you're trying to do the thing and count the thing. Yeah. I'm gonna go see what Max was barking about. You keep doing that, and I'll be back in a second.
This is very difficult. I have newfound respect for drummers, and I mostly previously I think I just looked at them as better than bassists, but now I think they may actually be the most talented people in bands.
It's awkward.
I'm not finding the second.
Yeah. So let's try going really slow.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. Yep. Got it. All right. Now let's forget the kick and let's go back to what we're doing with just the hi-hat and the snare.
Okay.
Let's reincorporate your brain to get back to the snare now. Don't worry about the kick. We're not going to incorporate the kick.
How much of this is muscle memory? Because I feel like if I just sat here and did that for an hour.
Yep.
And then I did that, day
That's-
after day. That would just become okay. Like that would feel like, I don't know, anything else I do.
Yeah, no, that's how most drummers learn is just by practicing that basic thing. And what's funny is you're going to hear a ton of people say, like, as they're talking about drums, you're going to hear everybody on the planet who has an opinion about drums say this thing that I'm about to say right now.
Okay.
Is that a lot of drummers, or a lot of people as they're learning drums, they start to get more curious and more creative, and they want to do more fills, they want to do more interesting beats.
Yeah.
When you get them to just the basic 4/4 thing,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them, especially early on, as they like gravitate away from it, they don't go back to basics. And just being able to hit consistently, where your hand is keeping perfect tempo, and your foot is hitting perfectly in sync on the 1 every time, and your hand for the snare drum is hitting perfectly in sync on the 2 every time. A lot of people, as they're again getting more creative and still learning and trying to do more interesting things, they get away from that, and so you'll see a lot of drummers, they get it's like maybe like their first or second band, they're in the recording studio, and they're having tempo problems because they're not used to having to be perfect. They're just like, and like the first time you hear it back, you're like, oh, that's what I sound like? Weird. It's like when you hear your voice on recording, you're like, that's what my voice sounds like, and people are still friends with me? That's strange. There'll be a lot of like, okay, well just play like a basic beat. You're like, okay, well there's the problem. Like they don't have like a good like foundational sense of rhythm. A lot of people try to like jump the gate a little bit and try to like do fancier things. And
everybody wants to be the freaking like guy from Twisted Sister
or whatever, right? Or like Neil Peart from Rush, right? But like in Ringo Starr, I always get shit on because they're like, oh, that's the beat he chose to play. It's like it's knowing what not to play. And Ringo had perfect timing, and he could play perfectly on that 4/4. I mean, he did a lot of things that were like really creative that like no one else would have thought of. But like when it comes down to just like the fundamentals, perfect metronome timing. And just like really good like solid foundation. So those are things that like get overlooked a lot. But so now that you're trying to translate it, like it makes sense why you're like, I see Ringo in a different light now. Right? So let's try going back to just the hat and the snare. Okay. So let's just try 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, snare on 2, snare on 4. That's 1. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. You got it. All right, now let's slow it way down like we were with it. Yep, there we go. Perfect. That's great. Okay, now let's go back to just the hat and the foot. Okay. And you're gonna put the foot on 1 and 3. Do the same tempo. Let's count it off on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. All right. That's consistent and good.
I feel better
with
about
each one individually, right? I think we should do it. We should do that again, and just keep the simplicity and the comfort level for just 2 limbs at a time. Okay. A couple more times, and then let's try getting them both in there. And the first time you do it, it's gonna sound weird. It's gonna be awkward, and you're gonna be like, oh god, that was awful. And that's just like, it's the Walt Disney 100 bad circles for every animator. Like you gotta get all the bad ones out. So it's just gonna happen. So just embrace it. All right, so let's go back to just the snare drum and the hi-hat.
Oh, snare.
Yeah. Okay. So on the 2 and the 4, so let's count it off. 1, 2, 4. No, on the 2. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. You got it. All right. Stop playing the snare and keep playing the hi-hat. So here's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna switch between the 2, and you're gonna keep going on this. You're never gonna stop. Okay. All right, and I'll give us the count off for when we go. So go ahead and keep playing the hi-hat. Okay. And let's do just the kick on the 1s and 3s on 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, stop playing the kick. There you go. Yeah, just the hat. 1, 2, 3. You got it. Go back to the kick. Perfect. Stop. And just the hat. Now just the snare on 2 and 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. There you go. You got it. All right. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. And try to put your kick on the 1 and the 3. Just try it. Yep. Yeah, so 2 and 4, right? Because you're like, oh, these things just end up naturally getting together, right? So let's try going really slow. Okay. And we're gonna try doing kick on 1, snare on 2, but we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Kick, snare, kick, snare. Kick. Slow down. Don't get too fast.
reset. Let's reset.
Yep. Kick. Spin. There you go. Yeah! Now at this speed, let's do the 1 and, so the 8 count.
Okay.
So let's try going 1 and 2.
Hit the
one.
hi-hat on it?
Yep. And 1 and 2. And 1 and 2. And let's just try the kick on 1 and 3. 1 and see that was 2, right? Because we're doing the ands. Don't forget. Ready? 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3. All right, so now again we have to let's do the same thing. Let's forget the kick.
Right.
Let's go back to our closed hi-hat, 1 and 2 and beat, where we're counting 8 times the 1 and 2 end.
Okay.
And we're gonna practice putting the snare on the 2 and the 4.
Okay.
And not the 1 and 3 and not any of the ands.
All right.
Okay, ready? So let's get a count off first. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 Alright, let's try keeping the hi-hat going. Try putting your kick on 1 and 3. Go back to just the hi-hat and the snare. This is why we always count off so we know which beat we're on. Ready?
1. Yeah.
So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, that was way too fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay, let's go back to the kick. Okay, 1,
Switching the
2,
timing
yep.
out, because okay, it's like, I want to hit something on the 2 and the 4,
Yep.
or the 1 and the 3.
Yep.
Switching between them is weird. Okay, let's see.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to try throwing a snare in there on the 2 and the 4, go for it. Yep.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I was putting on the 1 and 3.
You basically just went to halftime, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe trying halftime might work better. Let's try it. So halftime, we're
Just
so
alternate. We'll do this, and then we'll do this on the 1 and 3.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So it's going to be kick on 1, snare on 3.
Okay.
So count it off. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's the basic core of it. Is just like knowing those things. Like if you know how to play 4/40, you know how to play halftime.
Okay.
That is all pop music. There's some pop music that's like 3/4 and 6/8 and all that stuff, right? But like for the basics, if you were to do nothing but that, if you were to do that for an hour every day, you'd be very comfortable within 2 weeks.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
Probably.
can see.
I don't know, unless you're like totally garbage at it. But I don't think you are. I think you've got a natural sense for it already.
Yeah, I mean, the way you've broken it down makes total sense, and that it just obviously just requires just a tremendous amount of practice to actually get the muscle hits and whatever. But I can see the mechanics of it and like, you know, it's just that timing, getting your limbs to do what you want them to do
in the right
in that
synchronization,
timing.
on the right time,
And
on the right beat.
and as soon as you focus on any of the, like, I found myself floating a little bit and going wider, because if I would focus in on one of the things,
You forget what you're doing.
then the other one's like, this is like, this
Yep.
falls off.
And
right?
so that when you talk about floating, like that's where your brain will get to
Mhm.
once you're past the part of trying to focus on, like when
Right.
when 1, 2, 3, and 4 are just second nature, and you know what your foot's doing, what your hand's doing.
Yeah.
That's when you can start doing the kick goes, instead of on 3, it goes on the 3 and
Right.
So instead of like 1, 2, or instead of like the kick on the 1, 2, 3, 4, it'd be like 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
So you get that like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The offset.
Exactly. Which like reminds me of like a lot of like MC Hammer songs, or True Life Crew songs. Like they would always have that 3 and
Yeah.
on the second kick, right? Yeah, so that's when you're like, okay, now I'm gonna like not specifically put them on the 1 and the 3 or the 2 and the 4.
To make
but-
more
but to
interesting
do that-
combinations of timings and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, or just like where the accents are, right?
Mhm.
And to do that, where you should naturally be in a typical 4/4 or
Mhm.
halftime beat should be second nature. Okay, I'm on. It's here comes 3. That should either be my foot or it should be something else, depending on like what beat we're playing. Right?
Yeah. You gotta get that. You gotta get the basics down before
Totally.
before you can expand. And like, I think even in the course of this, which has only been like 20 minutes, if that, it's like this started to feel very natural. I know
Yeah.
that I was speeding up or slowing down.
Everyone
I was not.
I still do.
I was not keeping
Yeah.
very good time.
So I was
Because-
gonna fill in on drums for a band that I'm friends with,
Yeah.
and like my natural drifting was like too much. And like they're used to playing to a drummer who like plays along to a click, which like
Oh wow.
I can't even do. Like I can like write out drums in Logic digitally
Uh-huh.
and like hear the drums being played, and those are like my click track, and I know that like the transients of like what's reverberating from like the kick drum and the snare drum, whatever, like I can play in perfect time to those, but with a click, for whatever reason, I just can't, and it's really hard. And so even having done this for as long as I've done it, and I'm not a professional drummer, I'm not a master of the drums by any means, but for doing as long as I have and being able to play successfully or record successfully as much as I have, like I still drift.
Yeah.
And it's like a thing that like until you're like playing onto a click, or you're just like, oh, I'm the hired musician and I have to be perfect, this is my job.
Right.
Like if you're just like
So
hanging
like
out
a
with your
studio-
friends and playing, like it probably happens to like more people than we realize.
A studio musician or somebody who's like a fill-in would like really be like.
Yeah,
very
it'd be like when like
focused.
whatever you do for work, if you're just like, oh yeah, I kind of just like worked shitty for like the last 2 hours of my 8-hour day,
Right,
but like
right.
yeah, maybe that's fine. Like there's some grace there, like depending on the situation. But if it's like quarterly review, or like
Right.
you're like under the scrutiny of the corporate machine, like you're there to execute. You're there
I mean, one thing that I always associate drums, rock stars, etc. with is the corporate drum.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah,
should.
It's like it's that timing is
Yeah.
really important.
It is. Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking like even though I was drifting, as you might expect, someone whose first time ever sitting on the drum kit would, like this motion started to just feel like.
Yeah. And what's funny is a thing you're doing is you're already noticing the difference in your accents and how where you flourish. Right? One, right? On your 1, you're hitting harder and letting your 2 and 3 and 4s, right?
Yeah.
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 That's a way that like helps you find. A lot of drummers will use that to help them find their place like on the grid.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
if like
If you kind of lose track a little bit, you're beat off or something. You can if you're beating
if I'm
off.
gonna beat off, yes.
If you're beating
yeah,
off,
yeah.
you have to recenter.
Yeah.
But
It's a good way to like, and like people do it like for style or like add flair to like, you always hear people say like that drummer plays quote unquote in the pocket. I've never really known what that means, but I think when people say that, they just mean that like they're solid and they have like a little bit of flourish and a little bit of like style to it to like give it like a little bit of a groove, rather than just like a very staccato. Like the difference between like the drummer in the Strokes or the drummer in the Ramones versus like the drummer in I don't know, some band that like plays with like a little bit more swing or whatever, right? Like a traditional jazz drummer or like a swing band or whatever, would be that kind of like flourish that they put on it versus like very like hard, fast staccato. Or whatever. So yeah, I just think it's cool like you have a natural inclination to like put a little swing on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to?
We've gotten the basics.
Yep.
Let's talk about. I mean, we're not going to get to something where I'm going to do. But
Yeah,
like,
but
tell me how
let's
these come in.
Yeah, so they're called fills, right? And the reason they're called fills is because a man named Phil invented it. No, because you're filling open space, right? It's like or like you're filling in like from the monotony. So like if you're just playing 1, 2, 3, 4,
it's what differentiates you. Yeah.
Right? It's like
makes it a little different than like otherwise you're just a freaking metronome.
Right. Which like for some music is like exactly what it needs to do, right? Like a disco is always going to be very consistent, very robotic.
Yeah.
To keep a pulse going, right?
And a lot of that's like like loops and stuff, pre-recorded tracks.
A lot of times. Yeah, I mean, well, these days it's drum machines.
Drum machines,
right? But yeah, in the early days they were just taking pre-recorded music, and the reason it's called a loop is because they would cut the tape at a certain point and tape it together, and like
really, so the tape would just go
yeah,
through
and like at a certain point they would like run it around a mic stand and back to the thing, right? Like a literal loop, right? So that's why they're called loops, and so they used to do that. So like Staying Alive, they looped their own music. They just like created a loop out of a song that they already written and made it a different song. And like the drums are or they at least loop the drums for just like a perfect section, and the drums just like carry that song the whole time. But it's literally a tape loop of the drums, and it was like one of the first pop songs that like had done that in the studio. And that's like a pretty like Staying Alive's like a pretty like when we think disco, like we think Bee Gees, we think Staying Alive, we think that era of it. So a lot of that stuff was happening then. I'm sure there's probably people watching that are like, that is absolutely the wrong information. That's been the observation that I had.
Hey, I would just be happy if there was people watching. So
yeah.
Like, I don't know if anybody's going to challenge you on that.
Yeah, or if someone comes across this on YouTube in like 8 years or something,
Yeah. No, leave us a note in the comments about what Kevin's wrong about.
Yeah.
Not anything that I'm wrong about. I don't want to hear it. But everything that Kevin's wrong about.
Which is probably most things. Because when you self-teach yourself things, whether that's instruments or philosophy, a lot of times you're completely fucking wrong about the reason of why you think a thing is a certain way.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
But
I mean, we all think we all get to that point in the journey where we think we're an expert in it because we've done it, and it turns out like you get to that next point in the journey, and you're like, oh shit, everything I've done is wrong.
Yeah, I recently started saying that I don't believe in experts, and that anyone who claims to be an expert, I'm like naturally suspicious of, because I haven't got this whole thing. Like someone could stamp this out in like a quick second. I'd be like, I can see, but like it seems like to think you're an expert seems to me that like you're not curious about expanding more or learning more about something, and so that just seems like really cynical.
Yeah. Always be learning.
And so like anyone who claims to be an expert, like, and I know that most people that say this, what they mean is that like they have expertise in something because they put their 10,000 hours in or whatever.
Yeah.
But like when they're like, I'm an expert, I'm like, are you? Like it sounds like you think you know everything.
I think because it might be relevant to if we're going to continue having a conversation, I need to know how to do the classic. Is that it?
Let's talk about your. So let's just jump into our fantasy where I'm a successful stand-up comic and you're my drummer.
Yeah.
The rim, it's called a rim shot.
Rim shot.
Which is not
different than a rim job.
It's very different, but it's actually not a correct term for that.
Okay.
A rim shot is literally when the stick hits the head and the rim. Right. Okay. So the difference between and.
Okay.
That's a rim shot.
Okay.
But they call it a rim shot just colloquially because no one bothered to correct them. The psh, as it's called, is 2 snare hits and then the kick and the cymbal at the same time. So what we just learned was that when you crash a cymbal, you need to back it up with a kick. hit the cymbal on its own. Now hit the cymbal with the kick.
Yeah, it has that. You get that.
Yeah.
Richness, the
Yeah.
reverberation.
Now there's a lot of times where like you'll hit the cymbal like you're riding it, or you're doing some kind of like crashy, like washy thing, and you'll wash the crashes without hitting the kick. That's totally perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's an accented crash,
okay,
the kick goes with it. Yep. So people have just walked in the door. They haven't heard the setup, but they're about to hear the punchline, and they're about to hear your quote unquote rim shot, which is. And then I said to the guy, "That's how I got here." There you go.
Nice, love it. All right, see now I can be now I can be your house drummer.
Or anytime I'm like trying way too hard to be funny, you can do that in a sarcastic way. That'll be like, "Hey Kevin, maybe stop trying to make jokes out of everything."
What was who was Conan's? Conan had a very
Max Weinberg.
Max Weinberg. I can be the Max Weinberg to your Conan O'Brien.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's the quote unquote rim shot. Or also sometimes I won't have the but it'll just be but
Oh.
Right? Yep.
What,
or like yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you did when it wasn't too separated, it's called a flam. Is it a flam or I think it's a flam. Where so this is something that Dave Grohl does this, a lot of drummers do this, where you have that like choppy drum that right, they'll hit the snare with both hands, and it's really just like they come down just set slightly off, right? So think of it like you want try to lengthen it out, where it's yep, and then just shorten the time. There you go.
That's awesome. Yep. Yeah, I actually, now that you mentioned that, I noticed that. I think in a lot of Foo Fighters songs, that sort of thing. Okay, so if I wanted to play, so what we were talking about the fills.
Yep.
So like, this is writing it.
Yep. So what you're doing is the
Doors. I'm playing the Doors.
Yeah. So it's a swing. Yeah. Most people like when they think jazz, they think. Right. It's that little swing on it. Yep.
Yeah, you're like waiting for your drink to come at the jazz club.
Totally.
Somebody's maybe tuning up their trombone or something.
Yeah, whiskey, rocks.
That's fun.
Yep.
So like, I feel like you get a lot of different types of sounds because like that's obviously really light. That's a very different sound than like so you can use this to get an extremely wide range of.
Totally, and to even go further into that, let's go back to our high school days when we were listening to a lot of like Screeching Weasel and like all those punk bands, right? They would hit the cymbal here on the bell, right? Yeah. So remember those punk songs that or like a really good example is the King of the Hill theme song.
Okay, that's been a long time since I've heard that.
So you got that. There's the part where it turns and goes. And there's that ding 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 ding.
Yeah.
That's them hitting the bell.
I think we could do a whole episode of this of just us.
Of just acapella.
Just trying to recreate TV shows or like stuff from our history just with our own voices.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why. I mean, there's more reverb down here. I guess, or whatever you would call it.
Resonance.
Resonance.
Yeah.
So you hit it up here to get more of a.
Yeah, it's like a ping. It's called the bell of the cymbal. And so when you ride the bell, it's more of that kind of sharp, short resonance kind of thing.
Okay.
Like a lot of like emo bands will do like a fill, and then they'll hit the bell at the end of it, right? And there'll be this like boom, boom, check, a ping, you know, and then they go back. They go back to the thing. Like you'll notice a drummer that's been playing in indie rock bands for around 3 years starts doing fills like that all of a sudden. It's just like a common thing. It's about 3 years in when they always do. Yeah.
Oh, the third album, the second and a half.
Yeah, they
working
just
on your third.
Yeah, they just like heard some drummer somewhere do a fill like that. And they're like, oh, that's cool.
That's cool.
There was a thing I was personally obsessed with because I had heard the drummer from Hum do it, which is where you hit the hi-hat open with one hand, and then you hit the bell of the ride cymbal with the other after it. So it's like a ting tang. Yep. And then you time closing the hi-hat at the same time that you hit the bell. Yep. And so I would do like a very quick zing. And so I'd be playing the thing, I'd do a fill, and I'd do zing, and I thought I was like fancy as hell. And I'd be like, I'm the best drummer around. Everyone I was playing with was like, can you play less fills? You know, and because you're excited about it. You're like, I want to do all this fancy stuff. I learned how to do it. It's really exciting. I love that drummer. He does something like this. I want to do things like that. And everyone around you was like, please stop. Do less.
Do less. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's probably. I feel like there's a lot of drum mechanics here that's about doing less. Like,
totally.
Especially as you're learning and getting into it. Like, you know, even consider based on where I was at trying to keep the beat and doing the 4/4 stuff that we're working on, like trying to bring these in feels very daunting.
Yeah.
And obviously somebody who is really into it, doing it every day, practicing, is gonna get there, gonna play it. But like, you know, like you were saying, so many pop songs, so many songs are just kind of that.
Right. And so the drummer that I play with right now, he is intentionally playing way below his ability because that's what those songs need.
Yeah.
And then he'll just break out some, you know, kick on the end or some like little fill or something, and you're like, it's so much more impactful, right?
Yeah.
And he can play like at 10 for hours at a time, right? But I with these songs he'll play at like 4 or 6.
Nice.
And then he'll do a fill that like brings it up to 8 every now and then, and people are like, "Oh my god, that drummer's amazing!" You're like, "Wait till he goes to 10."
Crank it up.
And so a lot of drummers, they know, they know about like what's in service of the song. Right?
Yeah.
And so
I mean, it'd be like it's kind of like with a guitarist. Like you don't want the guy that's shredding every solo, but like you know, I think
unless it's jazz, then it's just a big solo.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. Jazz is not a big
solo.
So
okay.
let's talk about a round.
Okay.
A round fill is going to be where you just go around the kit and hit every drum. Symbol at the end. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to think about it in 2 sets of 4.
Okay.
It's going to be 4 on the snare drum, 2 on the rack tom, 2 on the floor tom.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
3, 4.
Yep. And so what you want to do is try it. Let's do it slow, where there's no pause, and it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then kick and crash on the 1, because a lot of times you start on the 1 with a. If you're gonna hit a cymbal, it's usually gonna be on the 1. Right? So if you think about it as like a 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the reason why is so if you do that, this is 1, and now you only need to do 3 on here, right? So 1, so 1, 2, 3. So let's actually try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3,
well, that's you know why that was actually working better for me because it was just the one hand.
Yeah.
There was something actually it was like there's the one hand and the one foot, so it's like the right side of my body was engaged, and that made it feel easier to do that.
So now what you want to try is try using both hands, and then you're gonna notice as soon as I get here, you're like, oh fuck, why am I leading with that hand? That's weird.
Yeah,
and then when you get over here, you're like, oh shit, how am I gonna do that? So a lot of times what drummers will do is they'll switch their dominant hand for the tom so that they can lead with a different hand to get over there.
Switch the
right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So let's try it this way. Let's try it so we don't have to switch our dominant hand.
Okay.
Let's on the snare drum with both of our hands. We're going to use our right hand for 1 and 3, and our left hand for 2 and 4. Same like you do when you do, right? So start with your left, with your right. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. Same mechanics. Get both hands up. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Try that. Yeah, see, you switch it on. So now the thing to try now is when you hit the drums, don't leave the stick on the head.
Okay.
Hit it and come back.
Pull back.
Yep. Yeah. Try it slow. Try it slow. There you go.
Okay,
Yep,
so
let's go around.
Do you know what I like about that more than what we were doing with the crossover? Was that it felt like my hands were coordinating together
Yeah.
more.
This is why-
Like, this was like something was just crisscrossing.
Yep.
Because, and I get that that's probably the way you want to do it. But you were talking about your friend earlier who was
Who
in
lead-
this,
yeah, he leads
and I
it,
can
yeah.
almost see that because like something. You know, there's a sound that I need to make on the left side of my body, and the right side of my body needs to make it, and then like.
So here's where you can do the same thing.
Okay.
Let's try playing it on the ride instead of the hi hat.
Okay.
So let's try our 4/4. So you're going to use your right hand on the ride,
Right.
and that hand on. Right.
It's
So
still
now-
difficult to bring them.
Yeah. So let's just try 1, 2, 3, 4, and put our kick on the 1 and 3.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Or just put the kick on the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. And put the snare on the 3.
I gotta get the rhythm.
Yep. There you go. You're playing the Sweater Song by Weezer.
Dude, this is fun. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I can see why you I can see why you're really good at drums and why you've played them in advance. Like,
Yeah, it's just nice to make noise and like get your frustration or your
yeah. It's so like it's physical, visceral. I think when you get really going, you probably work up a sweat.
Oh, totally.
Like,
And I'm still waiting for someone to invent a drum throne that is soft but also has an air conditioner. So it's like instead of sitting on an air conditioner throne, you're still sitting on a pad, but somehow it's able to air condition your butt. Like, that is going to be
well, they have that
a
in
true
cars.
marvel.
They have that in cars.
Do they really?
Yeah, I don't know what the mechanics of it are. You probably have to. I mean, what's like? Hey, we can do another episode where we build you an ass
conditioning. Yeah.
An ass conditioner.
Yeah. We'll call it the Crack Spare 3000.
Right.
There you go. Perfect time.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you. I think we should maybe call it here because I'm not going to get any better, and we've already subjected people to my terrible playing for.
I think
how
as
long we
a
have.
first time playing, that was well above the mark.
Thank you, man. Thank you. This is I like. Now I'm not going to invest in a drum kit, but next time I'm up here, I may annoy all of our friends.
But what you can invest in is an electronic drum kit that
yeah.
only you can hear yourself on your head.
For real?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they've been making them so long you can find used ones for pretty cheap.
Sweet.
So if you are interested, it would fit in your office pretty nicely, and it can fold up down really easy to like get out of the way and all that stuff too. So like if that's something you are interested in, that is a really good way to do it without disturbing anybody, or being like nervous about people hearing you, because they're not going to hear you unless they're in the same room. They just hear like a
the little tap.
tap sound, right?
Yeah, man. Well, this was great. This is like one of the ones that I would want to do more of. So that's like something I've been looking at the end of all of these. I'm like, what I want to do more of it. And so far, I'm like, with the exception of yoga that I said I might do, but mostly that was just to appease Kate.
The same way I'm going to start running, probably.
Yeah. Most of these things I feel like I would definitely try more of, but this one feels particularly good. I think there's just something about the physicality and the sound.
And it's fun.
And everything, and it's fun.
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing your expertise on this with me. And
you're welcome to come up and play the drums anytime.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. I'm gonna take you up on that. Cool. All right. Thank you everybody for joining us here at Casa de Commodore Pots with Kevin. Here we're down here. We'll see you next time. For anybody who's still watching, and for the future generations of YouTube viewers, thanks for hanging out. Click that subscribe or one of the buttons that your
Maybe the subscribe, not the like.
The like or the I don't know. Just
yeah.
I don't
If you
know.
click the like, we're gonna judge you. But if you click the subscribe, we'll know you're a real one. So.
All right. Later.